Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now today we're going to be taking a look at Atomic Man and doing some restoration on him. This is a figure I picked up fairly recently for, I think I paid £15 for him. They're not the easiest of the Action Men figures to find, and they generally have a few little flaws on them when you do pick them up. So I will cover the main things that you'll need to fix on Atomic Man in this video today. Now, if you're a g.i.joe collector, you might know Atomic Man by a different name. You'll know him as Mike Power, because this is the same toy released here in the UK as it was in the US. The only difference is really being the clothes and the fact that for us in the UK, we had flocked hair added to the doll, but otherwise it's the same figure. If I show you by pulling up the sleeves of this guy, you can see that he has the bionic right arm, and if I pull up the leg, you can see he has the bionic left leg. So he is the same toy as the Americans would know, Mike Power. So let's start by taking a look at what's wrong with this doll and what we need to fix. Immediately by looking at this doll, you can see that the normal problem of the hands perishing has happened to this guy. The hands are made of a rubber and it tends to go a bit brittle over the years, so you can see that he's lost all of the fingers on his right hand there, and the left hand, currently he's only lost one finger, but the others are snapped and about to drop off as well, so those will need replacing. Now, this is a sort of a strange era of Action Man toy in the fact that most of the body is constructed like the sort of 1968 type sort of Action Man, so with all the strings and everything is held together with string inside, but the hands are constructed in the same way as the Blue Pants Eagle Eyes Action Man. So to replace the hands, unfortunately you can't find these Atomic Man versions of the hands. They're slightly different to the Eagle Eyes version, so all I've been able to do is find some replacement Eagle Eyes ones which will do the job. They're slightly sort of fatter than the Atomic Man ones, but really once they're in place they should look just as good. It's a shame you can't get replacement ones, but these are the only ones that they make. These are from the 40th anniversary line, and I did try to find some original ones, but they're just impossible as this figure is not the most common of figures. Now the other thing we need to sort out, obviously he's missing his badge here that should be on the front of these overalls. There's also a repair been done on the overalls on the inside seam there, which isn't particularly well sewn, so I'm going to unsew all of the repairs on these overalls and put those back together. He is a little bit loose as well, so I'll see if we can tighten up his limbs. I think the first thing we need to do is to sort the hands out, so let's take all of his outfit off and we can see what we need to do to fix those hands. Now that I've taken his outfit off, you can clearly see the construction of the hands. As I say, these are more like the Blue Pants Eagle Eyes versions where the hands clip over two little pegs. If I show you Eagle Eyes hand, you can see it's the exact same sort of fixing. Now there may be a slight issue with these. These 40th anniversary ones are made of a much harder rubber, so I'm not sure whether it's going to be that easy to squeeze them over these pegs. If these do cause me a problem, I might swap them out for some original hands. I'll swap these off for a figure I have in my collection, because the rubber of the original Eagle Eyes hands was a little bit softer. We've also got a slight problem on the left arm in the fact that the fixing has been pushed much further into the wrist hole, but that shouldn't be too much of an issue. If I just pull off the arm here, as we know that all Action Men can be pulled apart quite easily, you can see that the little peg that the wrist is held onto is visible through the hole in the middle, so by pushing a screwdriver or something and hammering through that, we should not be able to knock that peg out, but I might have to go there, do that in the garage. So first up, let's try and replace the right hand and see if we can actually do that, or if I need to swap these out for some original Blue Pants Eagle Eyes hands. We'll see how that works. So first up, we're going to take the original hand off. I'm just going to use a screwdriver to gently push the plastic over the little pegs. This part of the hand is still quite rubbery, so they do actually come off fairly easily, like so. Now you can see the original hand all perished. Now we've got to see if we can fit this 40th anniversary hand over, and this is where I think it may be a little bit of an issue, because there's not much give in that wrist peg there. You can't take it out because of the sort of rotating mechanism that's added to this hand. So I'm just seeing if there's a way that we can actually do this. It might be possible to take that whole arm off and loosen that peg, so let's see if I can do that quickly. I've just had a go off camera to see if I can unclip that, but the plastic of the clear sort of forearm section is quite brittle, and it looks like it's going to sort of stress and break a bit if I try and unclip that. At some point that would have been possible, but really this plastic goes quite brittle over the years. So we're just going to have to try and force this hand on and see if we can get that on. Should be possible, but it looks like it's going to be fairly awkward to do. I think it really is. It's really, this new plastic is much stronger than the original one, so it could be quite an awkward job to do. So I'm just going to put a little bit of soap on this here, just so that it's got a bit of lubrication to it. Rub that round. See if that will help me squeeze this under the original pegs. It's just made my hands really slippy. Let's try with a screwdriver. Right, there's one bit in. There you go, we've got one side in, now we've just got to work the other side over. It is possible obviously, but it's certainly not as easy as it should be. You can see I've got that clipped over, and now I've got to try and wiggle the other end in. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully trim off a little bit of that plastic and just make this one side slightly smaller, so it should be a little bit easier. So let me do that first. I think that's done it. I've just trimmed ever such a small bit off, which I think will be hidden inside the joint anyway, and I should be able to now just push this around. There you go, and that's got that hand in, and that's actually nice and firmly held in place now, so it's going to work quite nicely. It's a shame that I had to trim that, but I think these 40th anniversary hands are just, the rubber is just too firm to fit in properly. Even the rotating mechanism is now pretty stiff, so I possibly could have trimmed off a little bit more of that to make that work well, but it does still work. You can still rotate the hand around and make the blades spin. So let's get on with sorting out his left hand, which requires me to pop out to the garage, and I'm just going to use a screwdriver or something that will fit down there and then hammer out the hand peg on this one. Then we can swap that one out a lot easier. And there we go, one quick whack with a hammer onto, I actually used an Allen key because it was about the right size, something with a flat end, and the hand and wrist peg pops out. So we can now just easily swap out this hand because there's nothing sort of in the way. It would have been nice if we could have removed the other hand, but that clear plastic was just looking too brittle for my liking. So here's the 40th anniversary replacement hand, and we should be able to just slot that in, push that onto the peg. Like so. If this peg is broken, again, these are relatively easy to find because it's a fairly standard peg, but it's not too much of a problem to swap them out. So we can now just push this back in place, and you can see that's fitted quite nicely and still rotates, and we can slot that back onto Atomic Man's elbow. There we go, so he now has two brand new hands, although they're not quite like the originals. They're as close as you're going to get at the moment. I think it might be nice if I buy some actual vintage Eagle Eye hands. I might see if I can pick some of those up. These replacement ones are $5.99. You can easily get them on eBay. I should be able to find some original ones for maybe a little bit more money than that, but not too much more. And it's nice to have original ones if you can find them. Let's move on to his uniform. Turning the outfit inside out, it's clear to see where it's been re-sewn at some point. There's a sort of inside seam of the leg and around the crotch and then down the other side of it. So I'm just going to use a little unpicker here. Mrs. toy-polloi has a very useful toolbox or sewing box a bit. So I'm just going to unpick some of the already repaired stitching, and then I'm going to re-stitch it myself, because even though my stitching is not great, I think I can do a better job than what's been done here before. And we can certainly make it look a lot better for sort of 10 minutes worth of work. So really just unpick all of this seam and get the stitches out the way. and then carefully resew it. So you can now see where I've unpicked the seam, because you can see my finger through to the inside. I think that's probably all we need to unpick there. It's not a huge amount, about an inch, so sort of 2.5 to 3 centimetres worth, and shouldn't take that long to resew. So I have some black cotton here and a needle. Just going to carry on and sew that up. It's not a complicated job. It should take 5 minutes. And so there's that seam resewn. Now it certainly looks a lot better than it did to start with. It's still not perfect, but that's an awful lot better. So the final thing we need to do on this outfit is to make the replacement little insignia that he has there. It should be a sort of bird with open wings. Now I've done a quick bit of research online, and I found a relatively good image of the front of Atomic Man with the insignia in place. And so I took that image into Photoshop, and with a little bit of sort of reworking and messing around, I was able to recreate that logo, and we can now use that to make a replacement badge. The file that I made is now available on toy-polloi.com, so what you're going to have to do is download that, and you need to print it onto some fabric transfer paper, which is what I've done here. So this is a small piece of paper that you can iron onto some fabric, and you'll have to remember when you print it out, it's got to be printed out backwards. So I've got the logo on here, toy-polloi logo, and you'll see that that is backwards, which gives you an indication that it's printed out correctly. And what you're going to do is find some fabric that is a sort of fairly sort of roughish cotton. So I've got here too, this is one that I used previously to make some $6 Million Man badges, as you can see here. I've got another one which is a little bit thicker, but I didn't think this worked so well. This works quite well for the $6 Million Man badge, but maybe a bit too thick for this little emblem. It's really hard to tell. You just have to sort of find something that you think works best. So now all I've got to do is iron this onto the fabric. Just follow the instructions that you get with this type of paper. It's fairly straightforward to do, fairly hot heat for a short amount of time, and it will melt this sort of transfer onto the fabric, and you'll end up with something that looks like this, but obviously Action Man style. So let's go and do that. After a short amount of ironing, you'll end up with something like this. Now the reason I put 6 on here is because sometimes you can see that they don't stick particularly well because these are so small. You get little patches on them, but normally out of 6 you'll get one good one. You can see here this one is pretty good. There's a nice level of black on there. Now it's got a grey border. The reason I do a grey border is just so that's what you have to cut off. So cut all of the grey off and you're just left with the little black bit, and that is the proper emblem for Atomic Man. So I'm just going to carefully cut this one out using a pair of scissors, and we can then glue that onto the Atomic Man overalls. So just carefully cut this out. It's a very small badge. You can see why this ends up getting lost. And there we have a replacement Atomic Man badge. If I bring the overalls in, we can just drop that on and you'll see how that should look, like so. Looking nice. Now I'm going to glue this on using some fabric glue. You can pick up fabric glue anyway. You could use even some sort of contact adhesive, anything that's a little bit rubbery. You don't want a glue that's going to end up too hard. The good thing with fabric glue is it doesn't go brown over the years, so this stuff is pretty good. Again, just going to daub a little bit of the glue on the back of this badge. Carefully make sure it goes to the corners. Like so, and then I can position this over. Luckily there's a little glue mark here where the original one has fallen off, so I'm just going to position this over the top of the glue mark push that in place, and then we just have to let that dry. It takes about half an hour. And here we have the finished restored Atomic Man. Now there wasn't a great deal to do on this guy, it really was just hands and the outfit, but the badge is something that's quite important. Without the badge it does look just like a black boiler suit, so it's nice to get that fixed and repaired. So if you want that file, do go to toy-polloi.com and you can get that one for free. I just want to say a big thank you to Lee Sylvester as well, because I did a quick trade with him and I've managed to find the missing helicopter blades, which was something I didn't have when I picked up this figure recently. As you can see, the badge doesn't look too bad at all. It's not quite perfect replacement because the originals were done on a slightly sort of metallic-y material, but it's still a really good replacement. It looks much better than not having anything there at all, so well worth putting the effort in to make that. I hope this video has been of interest to you, and thanks for watching. If you'd like to help support toy-polloi, then please check out my Patreon page. Links to that are in the description for this video.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter and Facebook.